welcome everyone to this topic in which we are going to talk about that what exactly is the different Maven interview questions here. Now in this one we are going to talk about what are the different questions, some couple of questions we are going to go through, and we'll try to understand that what exactly the answers are. Now let's talk about the first question over here. So what exactly is in Maven here? So Maven is nothing but a kind of a popular open source build tool which is available there. Now before Maven there were a couple of build tools which was present like ANT and a lot of other legacy tools was present there. But after that, Maven is something which was released as an open source tool, and it really helps the organization to automate some couple of build processes and have some particular mechanisms like build, publish, and deploys of different projects at once itself. So it's a very powerful tool which can really help us to do the build automations. We can integrate them with the other tools like Jenkins, and we can automate them. We can schedule the builds. So a lot of various advantages we can get with the help of this tool here. It's primarily written in Java, and it can be used to build up various other kind of projects also like C#, Scala, Ruby, etc. So all these other typical tools can also be built up with the help of this tool. So this tool is primarily used to do the particular development and management of the artifacts in the Java based projects. So for most of the Java based projects nowadays, this is the default tool, and it's already integrated with the Eclipse also. So when you go for a new Maven project, automatically it will be created for a Java project. You can use it for other languages also, but yes, default choice of Java of the Java programming language is Maven build tool only. Now let's talk about the next question. So what does the Maven help with? So Apache Maven helps to manage all the processes such as build process, documentation, release process, distribution, deployment, preparing the artifacts. So all these tasks is being primarily taken care by the Apache Maven. So this tool simplifies the process of project building. It also increases the performance of the project and the overall building process. So all these things are something which is being taken care by the specific Maven tool here. So it also uses the particular, it downloads the jar files of the different dependencies. For example, if your source code is dependent on some of the Apache Web Service jar files or some of the other third-party jar files, in that case, you don't have to download those jar files and keep in some repository or keep it in some lib directory. You just have to mention that dependency in the Maven, and that jar file will be downloaded during the build process and will be cached locally. So that's the biggest advantage which we get with Maven, that you don't have to take care of all these dependencies anywhere into your source code system. So Maven provides easy access to all the required information. It helps the developer to build the projects and without even worrying about the dependencies, processes, or different environments or different, because it's an kind of tool which can be used in any platform, Linux or Windows. So they don't have to do any kind of conversions. So all they have to do is that they have to just add new dependencies, and that should be updated into the POM file, and depending on that dependencies, the source code will be built up, and they don't have to refer any kind of third-party jar files. So they don't have to play with the class paths during the build process. So no customizations is actually required with this one. Now the next question is that what are the different elements that Maven take care of? So there are different kind of elements which is being taken care by Maven. So these particular elements are builds, dependencies, reports, distribution, releases, and mailing list. So these are the typical different elements which is being taken care by the Maven during the build process and during the preparation of the builds here. So all these things you can they can explore, they can extract on that part, and they can fully understand that how they can work on all these different processes. Now next question is that what is the primary difference between the ANT and Maven? First of all, both of them are primarily used for the Java-based project. So ANT is the older version and Maven is something which was launched after the ANT here. So ANT has no formal conventions which can be coded into the build.xml file there. But yes, the Maven has conventions, so information is not required as such in the pom.xml file there. So ANT is procedural, whereas Maven is declarative over here. So ANT does not have any kind of lifecycle, so it depends on you that how you program the ANT there. But Maven is having a lot of life cycles there which we can configure, we can utilize. So the ANT related scripts are not reusable because you cannot reuse it, and you have to do some kind of customizations in order to work on that. But yes, Maven is not having much of the project related any kind of dependencies. They can be easily reusable there because there is nothing about the pom.xml file. It's just the artifact name and the dependencies, which is something we can override or we can change, and then the same pom.xml file we can reuse as such for the new project also. So that is where the reusability comes into the picture. Now ANT is a very specific build tool, so we don't have to, there is no plugins as such which is available there. You just have to code everything that what build process you want to prepare. Whereas in case of Maven, we have the concept of plugins, which can really help us to understand that how we can make use of these plugins so that we can have the reusability implemented. So these are some of the differences which is available there between the ANT and Maven here. Now next thing is that what exactly is in POM file all about. So POM file is nothing but it's kind of a XML file which is available there, and it's having all the information regarding the project and the configuration details. So it primarily used over here that how the configuration needs to be done and how the setup should be performed as such here. So pom.xml file is the build script which we prepare. You can prepare it using a particular component, or you can have a particular mechanisms, or if you feel that you want to have some kind of setup. So all these things typically can be implemented, can be done with the help of build tools. So build tools can be really helpful for us to do the automations, and it can really help us to understand that how some build processes we can automate with simply with the help of pom.xml file here. So the developers usually put up everything inside these dependencies in the pom.xml file here. So this is the file which is usually present in the home directory, it's in the current directory, so that once the build is triggered, it will be picked up from that directory, and according to the steps, according to the content of the pom.xml file, the build will be processed or will be created here. Now what all included into the POM file here? So the different components which is included into the pom.xml file here is the dependencies, developers and contributors, plugins, plugin configuration, and resources. So these are the typical components which is a part of a pom.xml file, which can be same for a lot of projects. You can do some customization, and then the same POM file can be reused for the other projects also. Now what are the minimum requirement of the elements which is there for a pom.xml file, so without which the pom.xml file will not be validated and will be getting a kind of validation errors. So the minimum required elements are project root, model version, so it should be 4.0.0, the group ID of the project, the artifact ID of the project, and the version of the artifact. These are the minimum things which we want to define so that we can understand that what kind of artifact we are trying to prepare or we are trying to create here. So these are the minimum required elements which is required in the pom.xml file, without which the validation of the POM file will fail and the build will also fail here. Now, what exactly is the meant with the term called build tool? So build tool is an essential tool, is a kind of a process for building or compiling the source code here. So it's needed or it's required for the below generated processes. If you want to generate the source code, if you want to compile the source code, you want to generate the source code, you want to generate some documentation from the source code, you want to compile the source code, or you want to package the source code, whether it's a jar file, it's a war file, or it's a ER file. So whatever the packaging mode you want to select, you will be able to do it with the help of the particular build tool here. And if you feel that you want to upload these particular artifacts to the artifact tree, whether it's on remote machine or locally there, so that also you can do it with the help of this particular build tools here. So build tools can be helpful in doing a lot of activities for the developers. Now, what are the different steps which is involved to install Maven on Windows? Now, all you have to do is that you have to just first of all download the tar file from the Apache Maven repository there. Once that is done, so what happens that you have to set up some couple of environment variables. Now, if you download the Java JDK using the exe file, in that case the Java underscore home will be configured automatically. But if it is not available and you're not able to run the Java command line, in that case you have to set up the Java underscore home. And then similarly for Maven, you have to go for the Maven underscore home. That particular variable you have to configure. Now once that is done, all you have to do is that you have to edit the path variable. So the bin directory of the Maven extracted folder, you have to put it up into the path variable. And once that is done, what will happen that you will be able to check the latest version, the version of the Maven over there. If it is like some old version, again you have to extract the latest version and do the steps all together again. So these are some of the ways that in which you can actually go for the installation or the configurations of Maven on the Windows platform. Now, what are the different steps which is involved for the installation of Maven on Ubuntu? So Ubuntu, it's fine. You just download the package of Java JDK there. Once the JDK is installed over there, what you can do, you can simply go ahead and say that, yes, I want to search for a particular Maven package which is available there. So once the JDK is installed, all you have to do is that you have to configure the Java underscore home, m3 underscore home, Maven underscore home, and the path variable. Once all the path variables are something which is configured, then we will be able to check the latest version, like whether it's the version is correct or we are getting the standard version over here or not over here. So that's the main mechanism that how we will be able to configure the Maven on Ubuntu here. Now, what exactly is the command to install the jar into the local repository? Now, sometimes what happens that we are not able to fetch, like some dependency is not present on the particular central repository, Maven repository, or your Artifactory repository. In that case, you have some third-party jar which we want to install locally onto your repository. So in that case, we can go for the but we can download the jar file there, and then we can run the command called mvn install -file, and then we are giving the path like -d file, where the path of the file should be provided. Now once that is done, so what will happen that in the local .m2 directory, the specific artifact will be downloaded and will be installed there. So this is a mechanism where you will be able to configure, or you will be able to set up the artifacts locally, the jar file locally here in the local repository. So next question is that how do you know that the version of the Maven being used here? So the version of the Maven is pretty easy to calculate. So all you have to do is that you have to just go for mvn and space -- version. The moment you do that, it will let you know that what JDK or what Java version you are using, and it will also show you that what particular Maven version you're going to use here. So all that details you will be able to get with that particular command here. Now, what exactly is the clean, default, and write-in variable here? So these are the build cycles which is available there within Maven. So these are the built-in build cycles. So for clean, what happens that this life cycle will help you to perform the project cleaning. So usually during the build, there are some files which is created into the target directory. So the clean lifecycle is essentially helping us to clean up all that directory, all that particular target directory. And when we talk about the specific default, so default lifecycle handles the project deployment. That is the default lifecycle. And site is something which is helpful for creating the site documentation. It's kind of a life cycle which is available there. So clean, default, and site are the different life cycles which can perform different kind of attributes or different tasks here. Next question, what exactly is a Maven repository? So Maven repository refers to the directories of the package jar files that contain metadata. Now the metadata refers to the POM files relevant to each project. So here you can able to get your artifacts stored there. You can download these artifacts also during the Maven build. If you put up that dependency, there are different kind of repositories which is available there. One is the local repository, one is the remote repository, and one is the central repository. So these are the different typical type of repositories which we have, where we can store the artifacts also, and from where we can download the artifacts also whenever required. Now the first one is the local repository. So local repository refers to the machine of the developers itself, where all the project related files are stored there. Now whenever we work on the particular Maven, so there is in the home directory .m2 folder is created. Now usually whatever the artifacts downloaded from Artifactory or from the Maven repository, it gets cached locally there. And once it is downloaded, next time it will not download the same artifacts or the same dependency altogether again. So this local repository is something which is available locally on the developer's machine only. So it contains all the dependent jars which a particular developer is downloading during the Maven build. Now remote repositories refers to the repository which is present on the server, and from where we will be downloading the particular dependencies. So when we are running the Maven build on a fresh machine, so usually over there the local repository does not exist. So in that case, what happens that the .m2 directory is empty. But the moment you run the build, what will happen that the artifacts or the dependencies will be downloaded from the remote repository, and once it is done, once it's downloaded, it will be added, or it will be downloaded cached locally there, and it will be helpful in the future run. So that will be considered as a local repository because all the artifacts, all the dependencies are downloaded there. And central repository is something which is known as the Maven community, where all the artifacts is available there. So usually we cache or we mirror these central repositories as our particular remote repositories, because it could be a possibility that these remote repositories are something which we are hosting into our organization, and central repository is something which is available centrally for everyone to use it. So these are something some kind of repositories where each and every artifacts will be stored, and anyone will be able to have the access to these particular artifacts here. So these artifacts are every open source artifacts is something which is available over there to these central repository. Now how does the Maven architecture really work here? So the Maven architecture really works in the 3 steps. The very first step is that it reads the pom.xml file here. That's the very first step. Second, it downloads the dependencies defined in the pom.xml file into the local repository from the central or the remote repository here. Once that is done, so it will create or generate the reports according to the life cycles which you have configured, whether it's a clean, install, cite, deploy, package, or whatever the life cycle you want to trigger. You will be triggering that particular life cycle, and corresponding to that the build or a specific task will be performed. So these are the 3 steps in which the overall build or any kind of execution of pom.xml file really happens here. Now what exactly is the Maven build lifecycle? So Maven lifecycle isn't nothing but collection of steps here that needs to be followed for doing a proper build of a project here. So there are primarily 3 built-in cycles which is available there. Default, which handles the project deployment; clean, which handles the project cleaning there; and cite, which handles the creation of the project sites documentation. So these are the 3 primary built-in build cycles, life cycles, which is available as such. Now, so build lifecycle has different kind of phases or the stages here, because in the previous particular slide we were talking about what are the different particular build life cycles which is available there. But these are the different phases, like what are the different step-by-step executions, like further deep down, which is available there inside a specific Maven build lifecycle. So here you can see that it's compile, then the test compile, test execution is there, then package, integration test, verify, install, and the lastly deploy here. So these are the different build phases which is available as such over here. So what exactly is the command to use to do a particular Maven site? So mvn site is something which is used to create a Maven site here. Now usually whatever the artifacts is prepared, that will be prepared in the target directory. So here also you will be able to see a site directory which is available there in the target directory, which you can refer for the site documentations. What is the different conventions used while naming a project in Maven? So usually it involves 3 components. So the full name of a project in Maven includes, first of all, the group ID. For example, com.apache, com.example. So these are some of the particular way that where you can provide the group ID. Artifact ID can be exact project name like Maven project or whatever the project you are creating. So sample project, example project. So these kind of things will be there in the artifact ID. And lastly is the version, like which version of your artifact you want to prepare, like 1.0.0 snapshot, 2.0.0. So like this information you are providing, that what particular version you are trying to configure here. Now let's move on to the intermediate level, where we will be having a little bit more complex questions related to the Maven here. Now what exactly is a Maven artifact? Now usually what happens that when we do a build process, as an end of result of the build process, we will get some artifacts. For example, when we build a .NET project, so there we will be able to have a exe or DLL files as an artifacts. Similarly, in case of Maven, when we do a build process, there we get the different kind of artifacts, like depending on the packaging mode, like jar file, var files, or the ER files here. So these are something which is, getting generated during the build process, during the Maven process, and you can store them into your local repository, or you want to push them to the remote repository. It's something that totally depends on you. So Maven is a tool which can help you to create all the artifacts, whether it's a jar file, whether it's a var files, or whether it's a ER file here. And every artifact is having three attributes. The first one is the group ID, the artifact ID, and a particular version. And that's how you will be able to identify a full-fledged artifact as such in Maven. So Maven is not about only the name of the jar file. It's actually referring to the attributes like group ID, the artifact ID, and the version of the artifact here. Now, what are the different phases of the clean lifecycle here? So clean is something which is being used to clean the target directory so that a fresh build can be triggered there. So there are three steps: pre-clean, clean, and post-clean here. So if you wish that you want to override the particular lifecycle configurations and you want to run some particular steps before the clean activity, so you can do it into the pre-clean, and if you want to do it like some steps after clean, then post-clean can be utilized. Now, what are the different phases of the site lifecycle? So pre-site, site, post-site, and site deploy. So these are the different phases which is available there in the site lifecycle. What is exactly we meant by the Maven plugin? Now, this is the huge difference between the ANT and Maven here, because in ANT we were not having that much support of the plugins, and that's the reason why we had to deal with all the build configurations. So we have to simply put the overall build process, that how the build should be triggered, but that is not something which is there in case of Maven. In Maven we have a lot of flexibility, because we can actually put up what exactly build configurations we want to put here. We can put some features like important features over here in Maven, and these plugins we can utilize. For example, I want to perform a compilation. Now, I don't really want to do any kind of configurations in this one. So what I can do is that I can simply use the compilation plugin in Maven, and that can really help me, because I don't have to unnecessarily write or rewrite the configuration that how the compilation should be done. It's something which is pre-configured or pre-written in these plugins, that I can simply import the plugin and I can do the build process or the compilation process in a pretty standard mode. So I don't really have to do any kind of workarounds with that, and simply with a small automations I will be able to reach that how these Maven plugins can be integrated into my POM.xml file, and I can desire or I can have some particular procedures and some steps executed there. So that's the biggest benefit which we really get with the help of Maven plugins. Now, why exactly the Maven plugins are utilized? So to create a jar files, to create the var files, to compile the code files, to perform the unit testing, to create the project documentation, and to create the project reports. So there are a variety of things in which we can actually use these Maven plugins through the integrations within the POM.xml file there. So it's all about the plugins. You just import the plugin and that desired activity will be performed there. Now, what are the different type of plugins which is there? So you can have either a build projects. For performing the build activities, you can have some build plugins. For reporting plugins also there, which can be only generated or utilized to generate the reports, to process the reports, and do any kind of formatting or any kind of processing on the reports here. So that is where the reporting plugins are utilized. Now, what is exactly the difference between the convention and the configuration in Maven? So convention is in particular process when the developers are not required to create the build processes. So configuration is when the developers are supposed to create the build processes. So the users do not have to rectify the configuration in detail, and once the project is created, it will automatically create a structure. So they must specify every in case of configuration, you have to provide each and every details. So that's how the configurations really happens, because you have to put every detail into the POM.xml file, and that's how the particular configurations really work as such. So this is the huge difference between the conventions and the configurations here. Now, so why exactly is said that Maven uses conventions over the configurations? Maven pretty much does not put any efforts like on the particular developers that they have to put each and every configuration. So there are some ready-made plugins which is available there, and pretty much we are making use of that, so that in such a case we don't have to worry about the executions, and we will be able to pretty much work on that. So conventions, like Maven uses the conventions instead of the configurations, so the developers they don't just have to to create the Maven project, the rest of the particular structure will be taken care automatically. So they are not expecting that the developers should be doing the configuration work, and everything should be taken care in such a way that you just have to start the things, and rest of the things should be taken care by the Maven itself. So Maven will be responsible, because due to the plugins, it will be responsible to set up the default architecture, the default folder structures, and all you have to do is that you have to just place the source code in the desired folder structure here. So that's something which you need to do as a particular developers. So what exactly is the Maven order of inheritance here? So the order of inheritance is the settings, CLI parameters, parent POM, and the project POM, which means that if you have some configuration and settings, that will be the highest value, then the CLI parameters are there, then the parent POM is there, and then the project POM. So this is the way that how the particular parameters or the configurations will be picked up by the Maven. So that's the order. So what does the build life cycles and the phases imply in the basic concept of Maven? So build life cycles consist of a sequence of build phases, and each build phase consists of a sequence of goals. When a phase is run, all the goals related to that phase and its plugins are also compiled. So you will be able to have a lot of particular goals which is residing inside a phase there. And similarly, lifecycle is nothing but a kind of a sequence of the different phase. So lifecycle comes in the top, then it comes on the phases, and then it comes on the goals here. Now, what is the terminology called goal in case of Maven? The terminology goal refers to the specific task that makes it possible for the project to be built and organized. So it's something which we can run. So it's the actual implementation which is going on there. For example, in the build process, in the build phase, I have a different goals like clean, install, package, deploy. These are the different typical goals which is available there, which I can execute into the Maven here. So these are the different goals like which we can execute and which we can run during a Maven build. Next question is, what is exactly meant by the term dependencies and the repositories in Maven here? So dependencies refer to the Java libraries which we usually put up into the pom.xml file there. Now what happens that sometimes our source code is requiring some jar files like a secondary jar files for performing the build process. So instead of downloading it and storing it into the class path for during the build process, we just have to specify the dependency of that artifact, what dependency we need to put, and once that dependency is put up there, we will be able to have that jar file downloaded and cached into the local repository during the Maven build project. Now if the dependencies are not present in your local repository, then Maven will try to download it from the central repository, and again if it is not it's something which is available, which is downloaded from the central repository, then it will be cached locally into the local repository. So that's the cycle which is being implemented and utilized during this process. Now what exactly is in Snapshot in Maven? So Snapshot refers to the version already available in the Maven report repository. It signifies the latest development copy. That's what we do with the case of Snapshot here. So Maven checks for a new version of Snapshot in the remote repository for every new build. So during the build process, like a new Snapshot version is being downloaded, and the Snapshot is updated by the data service team, which with updated source code every time to the repository for each Maven build. So Snapshot is something which we will be using like very frequently. We will be updating to that, and frequently we will be updating the version to that, and we will try to explore and we'll try to do the modifications. Now what are the different type of projects available in Maven? So there are thousands of Java projects which can be utilized or can be implemented by Maven here. So this helps the as the user that they no longer have to remember every configurations to set up particular project. For example, Spring Boot, Spring MVC, Spring Boot, etc. These are the different projects which is already available in Maven. So most of the we have already discussed that for the Java based projects, Maven is something which is considered as by default. So a lot of organizations are actually using it for storing or utilizing it for the particular Maven project. Now what exactly is the Maven archetype over here? So Maven archetype refers to a Maven plugin that is entitled to create a project structure as per its template. These archetypes are just project templates that are generated by Maven when any new project is created there. So this is something which we are using so that we will be able to create a fresh new projects. Right, so let's go on to the advanced level of this Maven questions. Now what exactly is the command to create a new project based on an archive type. So Maven archetype generate is used to create a new Java project based on the archetype. Now this will take up some parameters from as an end user from you, and depending on that parameters it will create the pom.xml file, it will create the source directories, inside that main, Java, test, all these different couple of directory structures will be automatically created. Now why we require this command? So that if you are going to create a project from scratch from the day one, this command will help you to have all the folder structures created, and then further on you can put up your source code and those files as such in this folder structure. So that's how is the mechanism that we will be able to see that how the setup can be performed really over here. Now what does Maven Clean implies? Now Maven Clean is a plugin that suggests that it's going to clean the files and directories there. So whenever we do a build process, usually in the target directory we have some class files, some jar files, or whatever the generated source code which is available, that will be present in the target directory. So the Maven Clean is something which is available, which is going to clean all these directories. And why we are doing this directory structure cleanup? So that we will be able to do a fresh build process, and there should not be any kind of issues as such over here. So that's the main reason why we are looking forward for this particular mechanism, or for this particular changes as such here. Now, so what exactly is a build profile all about? So build profiles refers to the set of configurations where we can have like typically two different kind of build processes there. So if you feel that the same pom.xml file you can you want to run for different particular configurations, so that you will be able to do pretty much with the help of this component. So build profile is used to do a customization processes, so that you will be able to have the process, and you will be able to perform the configurations and the setups all together there. So that's a very important aspect to be considered, that which we need to discuss when we talk about the build profile. So build profile, whenever you feel that you want to do some customizations and you want to proceed with the setup, so that's where it's utilized. Next thing is that what are different type of build profiles which is available there. So the build profiles can be done on for a particular project, like per project you can do. You can even do the build profiles in the settings.xml file also, and if you feel that you want to do it into the global settings.xml file, so that also you can do as such over here. So there are different ways in which you can do the customization, and once the customization is done, you will be able to have the different ways of doing the setups and the configurations over there. So what exactly is meant by the particular system dependencies here? So let's talk about that also. So system dependencies refers to the particular mechanisms where we feel that how the dependencies should be present there. So that is something which is having a scope of system there. So these dependencies are commonly used to help Maven know the dependencies that is being provided by the JDK. System dependencies are mostly used to resolve the dependencies on the artifacts that are provided by the JDK. So these dependencies are somewhat which is being utilized and used over here, so that we will be able to implement and go ahead through the system dependencies. What is the reason for using an optional dependency here? So optional dependencies are used to decrease the transitive burden of some libraries. So what happens that when you download an artifact, when you put up a dependency, so it could be a possibility that some dependencies as in particular optional can also be downloaded. Now these are not always required, but yes, sometimes what happens that these are downloaded so that you don't have to put each and every artifact or dependency into the pom.xml file. For example, you're trying to download some Apache tool, and with that some like 3-4 jar files or 3-4 another dependencies are also getting downloaded. Now if you are using that dependencies, that totally great, because you don't have to put that list or that entry in the dependency list in the pom.xml file, and that can really save your time. But if you feel that you don't want to have them, and these are the optional ones, and you really want to get rid of that, so that also you can exclude while downloading any kind of dependency. So these are the optional ones which, depending on your requirement, you can utilize, you can process, and if you feel that you don't want to get it, you won't want to process it, you can simply ignore it and you can get rid of that also. Now what is a dependency scope, and how many type of dependency scope are there? So there are different type of dependency scopes which is there, which is used on each and every stage of the build here. So compile, provided, runtime, test, system, import. These are the different kind of dependency scopes which we have, using which we can define that when exactly we want to go ahead for a specific build process. So depending on your requirement, you can explore all these build scopes and you can get benefits out of that. What is exactly a transitive dependency in Maven? So Maven avoids the need to find out and specify libraries that our own dependencies require by including the transitive dependencies automatically. So transitive dependencies says that if X depends on Y and Y depends on Z, then X depends on Y and both there. So which means that you are not dependent on one artifact, you also need the Z artifact there with the Y artifact. So that is what you need to do, so that you will get both the dependencies there, because this is normal that if you are trying to download some particular artifacts or download some dependency, and that dependency is also dependent on some other artifact or some other jar file, then you have to include both of them. So this is something which you will be able to get, so that you can easily download all these dependent jar files also, and the Maven build can be success. How can a Maven build profile can be activated? So Maven build profile can be activated through different ways. So explicitly using the command line, you can talk about that which profile you want to execute. Through Maven settings, you can do based on environment parameters, OS settings, and present and missing files. So these are the different ways in which you can actually activate that which particular profile you want to have. So profiles configurations can also be saved in various situations and various files, and from there you will be able to refer that which file you want to refer as such. Now, what is meant by the dependency exclusion? The exclusion is used to exclude any transitive dependency, because you never know that if you are trying to put up a dependency entry in the POM.xml file, that artifact is also further dependent on another artifact. So in order to see that you want to exclude that dependent artifact which is being automatically downloaded, that also we can exclude with the help of exclusion. So you can avoid the transitive dependency with the help of dependency exclusions here. So what exactly is in Mojo? So Mojo is nothing but Maven plain old Java object here. So it's an executable goal in Maven, and a plugin refer to the distribution of such Mojos. So Mojos enable the Maven to extend its functionality that already is not founded in it. So it's kind of an extension which is there, and using this we can get some additional benefits and some executions over there. So what is the command to create a new project based on a hard drive? So again, Archetype is something which we normally use to create the new projects. Now you can give the parameters in the command itself, or you want it to in kind of an interactive mode where it will take the parameters from the end user, and according to that the project will be created onto hard drive or onto server, wherever you wish you want to create. You can create a new project. So explain about the Maven settings.xml file. So Maven settings.xml file contains the elements that are used to define that how the Maven execution should be there. So there are different settings like local, remote, central, all these different repositories are configured as such over here. Now in this case, what happens that usually the configurations are done in such a way that it can go for the executions, it can go for the build process, and the complete executions can be involved and can be achieved as such here. So all these executions are something which we can really perform, and here we can put some credentials, how to connect to the remote repository, how to connect to remote repository. All that stuff is something which we talk about over here. What exactly is meant by term Super POM here? So Super POM refers to the default POM of Maven. So the POMs of Maven can derive from, so it's nothing but a reference to a parent POM which is available there, that is the Super POM. So if you define some dependencies in that Super POM, automatically the child POM will also be able to inherit all those dependencies. So we can put some executions, like we can put some configuration in the Super POM, so that if multiple projects are going to refer that, they should be able to refer that easily. So that's the reason why we primarily use the Super POM, so that we can have the execution, some processes put up over there, and all the other projects should be able to refer or inherit from there. So where exactly the dependencies are stored? So dependencies are stored like in different locations, like you have the local repository, remote repository is there, local repository is on the local developer's machine, and remote repository is something which is available on a server in form of Artifactory. So that was some of the questions from the particular Maven, depending on the beginner, advanced, and the intermediate level over here. So that's what we have for this. Thanks.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.